Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty Roundtable Radio Talk Show.
Does the elephant have its nose under the tent? Happy to have you along, my fellow Americans. I'm Sam Bushman. I've got Lowell Nelson with me, campaignforliberty.org. Welcome back, Lowell.
Thank you, Sam. Good to be back. Thank you. Good to be with you.
And before we get to the elephant, a quick tidbit. I've been gone for the last week. Thanks for all your patience. In a way, it was a vacation, and I'm grateful for it. I needed some kind of rest and downtime a little bit. On the other hand, it was some real cool stuff I was involved in. There's a group called the American Heritage Choir in American Fork, Utah, and it is led by the American Heritage School, but it's not an American Heritage School. It's an after-school choir meant for the community. And so people from all kinds of schools all across the country are involved in this. And what do I mean? Well, the campus of American Fork, Utah, American Heritage Schools is the bulk of the choir, along with their Salt Lake campus is another huge section of the choir. Then there's people from the community that don't even go to those schools that are involved. And then people from across the country who are involved in American Heritage Schools online and other schools can apply and become part of the community choir as well. Anyway, they practice all year long. It's credit for some schools, etc. But it's tremendous, and they learn religious music. They sing about Christ. It's non-denominational, but they promote God, family, and country, really, in everything that they sing and do. They celebrate Christmas, Thanksgiving, holidays. It's just a tremendous point towards Christ event. They do these presentations that are about an hour long, which are spoken word along with music. The kids sing. They have solos. It's the choir. The spoken word parts are usually related to the school or to the individual's kind of personal experiences about maybe depression or about struggles they've had in their life and how they've turned to Christ or how their families help them. Anyway, it's tremendous. And they put together these tours that they do every summer. And they've gone all over the country, the United States primarily, but this year they're doing their first international tour. So they went on a Texas tour now and sang at a bunch of big cities in Texas. Congregation after congregation were attending. Anybody can go. It's free, but it was tremendous and really had some impact and made a difference. Well, I was following that choir because I've got 8 children. They've all sung in this choir. They've all gone on the tours year after year after year. I've followed it for like 20 years now. And my last daughter, my youngest daughter, did her final tour. So I went and followed that tour, and we spent time during the day seeing some incredible sights. I went to the Alamo, et cetera, and learned more about Texas and more about our history and did all kinds of fun things. And then at night would go to these choir conferences. And man, what a treat, what a present that was. Anyway, and now my daughter's going to go to Europe. They're going to Europe for their first international tour. And they're going to be singing across Europe as well. I'm not going to that one. Can't afford it. Don't have the time. But I wish I could go. Anyway, long story short, tremendous musical talent. And the reason that I bring it up is, I've been involved in the spoken word, talk radio, and everything else for 30 plus years. But man, does music touch the heart, Lowell.
Absolutely. You're right. It does, Sam. I think some of the most touching sermons are spoken in music. You get not only the story, which comes with the words, but you get the music, the sentiment, the emotion, the appeal. It just moves the heart. It moves the soul. It speaks to the heart and soul of a person, and something that words alone cannot do. Music has the power to do, and music, of course, is spoken the same in any language, right? The musical, melodies. There's no need to translate them. They convey a message in any language, and it's just really powerful, really fun. And I'll tell you, Sam, yesterday I got to lead our ward choir with a number, one of Mac Wilberg's numbers, "My Shepherd Shall Supply My Need." Beautiful arrangement of that piece, and it was a lot of fun doing, and just really a great feeling being part of that choir. Sam.
I love it. I think that matters. And, people are sometimes touched by talk, sometimes by music, some by acting and presentations. And, it just shows the incredible talents God has given all of us, ladies and gentlemen. Well, this relates to kind of the peace idea. Donald Trump announcing over the weekend we're going to have a great peace initiative. They got it all worked out. They're going to sign it this Friday. I have my serious doubts, but I pray he's right, Lowell.
Yeah, I do too. I took that news with a grain of salt. I mean, I really do hope it happens, and I'm encouraged that it is happening. Obviously, if he's talking about peace more than he's talking about war, that's a good thing, but here twice before he's betrayed Iran, being at the negotiating table when he attacks them. So I hope this isn't simply another prelude to attack on Iran. But I'm optimistic, and I pray that peace will break out in the Middle East, and we'll have, families can once again live their lives as they wish. They're in the Middle East. Sam?
There you have it. But the battle's on. They're claiming peace, and I pray they have peace. But here's what's happening, in my opinion. While we're hearing about peace, while we're hearing about, fighting at the White House, the, big old mixed martial arts fight, while we're hearing about election concerns, while we're hearing about everything, the weather, the economy, we're hearing about everything. But in my opinion, what's happening behind the scenes that Ron Paul hits squarely in his recent column. You know what? We're starting to make agreements behind the scenes, which are massive concerns with regards to sovereignty. Lowell?
And that is the injection into the next year's National Defense Authorization Act, which is the NDAA. You've heard that name before. They pass one of these bills every single year, the NDAA. And the last one they passed was the NDAA of 2026 because it coincides with their fiscal year. Well, their fiscal year starts on July 1st, and so they're passing this NDAA of 2027. Both houses of Congress have a version of this bill, and the one in the U.S. House, which is H.R. 8800, that passed the House last week. It's been about 10 days ago now, on June 4th.
And did it even really get reported on, Lowell? Because I don't really see even any reporting on it, hardly.
Well, only by the alternative media, Sam, and there's a boatload of them talking about it. I picked out 3 or 4 articles to talk about this morning, and yet there was 2 or 3 times that many people sounding the alarm about this. This Section 224 of this upcoming year's NDAA, they want to integrate the Israeli military and the U.S. military, basically combine the two militaries in terms of intelligence, in terms of innovation, in terms of armaments. Ben Freeman wrote this last week.
We can't be doing that kind of stuff. Congress doesn't have authority to shift our sovereignty. There's no authority anywhere in the Constitution that provides for us to defer our sovereignty to another and or share our intelligence that could be national security breaching. There's no authority whatsoever for that. Congress doesn't have authority to do that.
Never stopped them before now, Sam.
I'm just telling you, constitutionally speaking, I have a big problem with this. And see, people mix up my opposition to some of these things as I'm against Donald Trump. I'm not against Donald Trump. I think he's the best president in our lifetime. Is he perfect? No, there's a lot of gaps that I'm concerned about. But he's way better than any president we've ever had. At the same time, though, Congress can't do this. The president can't do that. They simply lack delegated authority. So it's not about going against Trump. It's about the Constitution and about authority, Lowell.
You're absolutely right, Sam. And that's exactly what Thomas Massie has been saying. It's exactly what I've been saying. We're here to support the Constitution. We're not here for or against the president. We're here to ensure that the Constitution is followed, and that's what I'll be writing my congressman about. Probably every day until I get an answer. I assume I'll get an answer right away. He's usually really good to respond. But I want to make sure that he's opposed to Section 224. Ben Freeman wrote last week what this would do. He says, quote, "The U.S. and Israel already work together heavily on missile defense, but this provision," speaking of Section 224, "would greatly expand coordination to seemingly every area of defense technology, including AI, quantum, autonomous systems, directed energy, cyber, biotech, and many more. It also proposes network integration and data fusion. In other words, the U.S. military's data could soon be the Israeli military's data, end of quote. And so that's why we're looking at, folks, and that's why so many in the alternative media are sounding the alarm about this section. And Ron Paul, he says it's hard to think of a more America last policy position than handing the keys to the Pentagon and our intelligence community to a foreign country.
All right, go ahead and skip the break, Liz. Continue, Lowell.
Yeah. He warns that this section would essentially remove future Congresses from any role in determining what level of support, cooperation, and oversight should be included in the U.S. relationship with Israel, end of quote. In other words,
and let's be clear, this relationship has to do with war or sharing military intelligence. It's a war-based discussion. Congress is clearly in charge of war. So this is another example where Congress thinks that it can just check out and delegate that to another. Wrong. Congress does not have authority to decide they're going to delegate whatever authority we gave to them to a third party. They don't have that authority to do that. This is so clear, it's not even funny. And if I bring it up, people are like, oh, you're against Donald Trump. I'm not against anybody. I'm just telling you that right now, unless you want to change the Constitution, it is flat out unconstitutional. It breaks the law. It breaches our sovereignty. And Trump should be one of the biggest people to stand up and go, have you lost your minds, people? I mean, somebody's got to speak up somewhere, Lowell.
That's right. And if we do, if the American people will speak up, if we'll melt the phone lines down to our Washington, to congressmen, we can stop this. It's been done before, and we just need to do it again. Paul Craig Roberts jumps on the bandwagon here, too. He criticizes Section 224 of the NDAA. And he says there's a few Democrats who have tried to block the section, but it's the Republicans, Sam, who are moving it forward anyway. Republican Mike Rogers claims this integration will improve oversight. Republican Don Bacon believes the U.S. will benefit from the technological advances that Israel will undoubtedly provide. Texas Republican Ronnie Jackson says U.S. security is at risk unless we integrate the two militaries. He claims our enemies will get Israel first, and then they will come for us. Just incredible, this warmongering, this boogeyman story that they're telling. But on the bright side, California Democrat Sarah Jacobs pointed out what you just pointed out, Sam, that laws currently on the books prohibit weapon transfers to countries that are committing war crimes and violating international law, which is exactly what Israel's been doing. Their genocide in Gaza, that's a war crime. Their killing of the Lebanese people, it's a war crime. I mean, they're killing civilians and children. Hey, it's black and white, Sam. And Republican Thomas Massie opposes this section of this bill too. Another reason that the Israeli lobby removed him from office. Now, and so that comes out in an article by Paul Craig Roberts. Well, what about the Moon of Alabama? He writes about this as well, and he reminds us that Israel is known for selling U.S. secrets to other countries. When Jonathan Pollard pilfered strategic deployment plans of U.S. nuclear submarines for Israel, the Zionists there in Israel sold those to the Soviet Union.
And let me prove this point to you right this second, Lowell, to kind of make this point. Right now, Donald Trump says, I've got a peace agreement with Iran. We're going to go ahead and sign that this Friday. But the headline from Israel right this very second says, Israel says that it will continue military operations despite the deal. Israeli leaders rejected the suggestion of a broader regional withdrawal and said that operations in Lebanon, Syria, Gaza would continue. So with that in mind, Lowell, I guess I don't understand. What if we had this agreement in place now? Would we be forced to go along with Israel? Would we have a duplicitous or a kind of a contrarian, we want to have peace here, but we're going to do this there? How would that all work out? And see, this is disaster. We have different agendas and goals and desires and expectations, and this is disaster, and this headline just proves it. It would undermine the whole deal, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it sure would. I think it would. I mean, it was Israel a month ago who claimed that, okay, we have a ceasefire, but then they continue to beat up on Lebanon, right? And so Trump says, hey, that's not part of the deal, and Israel says, yeah, we made a deal to have a ceasefire in Gaza, but that doesn't mean we have to stop shooting the Lebanese people. I mean, it's just crazy, Sam. And
well, then you got Ukraine and Russia too going on. We're trying to create peace there. How can we stand as a peace partner in the world, make all these agreements for peace, but yet have Israel just going psychotic, and then we're going to have so-called joint, I don't know what you want to call them, sovereignty breaching international commitments that no one in the United States has authority to agree to, change, modify, or back out of, or reject it. You know, we're supposedly in it forever. See, that's the thing. They'll say you can never back out of that. If you do, there's all kinds of complications and stuff. We need to speak up on this, and I don't hear anybody talking about it. They're all too busy talking about this guy got in a big fight last night and won, and it was awesome in the White House. It was incredible, and Michelle Obama's a man, and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, what is happening? Fake news everywhere, lol.
Yeah. Even the amendments in the House Armed Services Committee that were offered on this NDAA, they weren't hitting the important aspects of the bill. They were arguing about the names of bases, changing the names of bases. That was one of the big arguments about this bill in the House Armed Services Committee. They're entirely focused on the wrong things, and they want to take your attention, ladies and gentlemen. They want to divert your attention off of the important substantive things in this bill, and so that you don't think that anything bad is happening. But I guarantee you, Sam, in addition to the people John Paul, or Representative Ron Paul, also Paul Craig Roberts, also Moon of Alabama, Alan McLeod. Who else talked about
Sam
this?
Bushman.
Sam Bushman, Caitlin Johnstone, Philip Giraldi, Andrew Wallace, and I'm telling you, many, 2 or 3 times that many of these great authors at LouRockwell.com and RonPaulInstitute.org.
Who's our anti-war buddy? He's involved too.
Yeah, I've been talking about this, and so, folks, this is important. This is key. We need to make sure every single Congressperson, every critter in Congress knows that we're against Section 224 of this upcoming NDAA.
Well, I think you got to reject NDAA altogether. Then we don't need to worry about 224. But you're spot on, right?
Yeah.
And ladies and gentlemen, look, not only did I bring up this duplicitous nature while we're going to try to create peace and sign a deal on Friday, I pray this happens, by the way. I have my doubts, but I pray for it. Israel is going contrary to it right now. They're going to continue military operations despite the deal. If that doesn't tell you there's concern, I don't know what really does. But we also need to get over the elephant in the room, and that's how I started the show today. Lowell. The elephant in the room is this idea that, hey, the USS Liberty cannot be forgotten, Lowell.
No, it can't, Sam. And as a kid, I didn't know much about USS Liberty. I probably got glimpses of it in the JBS bulletins that my mom and dad subscribed to and that I read occasionally. But I'm 59 years ago last week, meaning June 8th of 1967, we had an intelligence ship called the USS Liberty floating there in the Mediterranean, clearly marked as a United States ship. It was an intelligence gathering ship, and it was attacked. And by whom? By Israeli fighter jets. Okay, the fighter jets attacked this boat, and then some of the survivors that were sitting in the water, they were attacked. They were strafed with machine gun fire by these PT boats that came out, and then also submarines fired. There were 3 subs from Israel that fired on the USS Liberty, and killed 34 members of the crew, wounded 173 or 4 of them, and this incident was covered up big time, and yet
still is, by the way,
and still is. Israel claims it was an accident, but they took fire for a full hour, Sam. 60 minutes of fire, and the ship couldn't do anything to defend itself. It wasn't a warship. And so it was just a sitting duck there in the Mediterranean, clearly marked, and Israel claims it was an accident. And then you got all these sympathizers, Israeli Zionist sympathizers in top positions here in the United States, they were just apologizing, bending over backwards, apologizing. Yep, this is an accident. Israel didn't know what they were doing. And, I mean, this is pretty crazy, Sam.
And my response is, if it's true they didn't know what they're doing and it was truly an accident, then let all the information come out. Let's go ahead and have accountability. Let's have a formal apology. Let's go. If it's really that way, then do it right. That's all.
Well, so Thomas Massie in Congress, in the House last week, he called for a congressional investigation into the Israeli attack on the Liberty. He had 13 or 15 of the survivors in the House gallery were listening to his remarks. And I listened to these remarks last night, Sam, and he's truly courageous. This Thomas Massie, what a hero, because he wanted justice for the survivors of the USS Liberty. And you can learn more about this at ussliberty.org. Or you hear his remarks in this piece posted at Lou Rockwell, entitled "Representative Thomas Massie Calls for a Congressional Investigation into the Israeli Attack on the USS Liberty." But my point here, Sam, is that Israel is not our friend. Israel is not our friend, and there's an increasing number of Americans who are agreeing with this new position on Israel. Our old position was, Israel, right or wrong, will support and defend Israel no matter what they do, but that's the wrong position. There's an increasing number of young people who are opposed to this position, like 2/3 of American young. When I say young, I'm talking about age 20 to 40. Oppose this support for the Zionists there, the U.S. Israeli regime. And so that's really, really encouraging. But just to underscore the fact that Israel is not our friend, the CIA information reports from June and October of 1967, the very year the USS Liberty was attacked, they say that, quote, Israel's forces knew exactly what flag the Liberty was flying. And the Israeli Defense Minister, Dayan, I'm not sure how you pronounce his name, quote, personally ordered the attack on the Liberty, end of quote, over the objections of senior uniformed military personnel, one of whom characterized the attack as pure murder, right? So they did have some personnel in Israeli Defense Force who understood that this attack was murder. And so just like in the IDF today, there are soldiers over there who disagree with what the Israeli regime is doing. Just like we have soldiers in the U.S. military who disagree with what the U.S. is doing, we do have those whistleblowers over there in the IDF as well. Well, in a 1984 interview, Sam, CIA Director Richard Helms stated, quote, everything possible was done to keep the American public keep from the American public the enormity of this attack on an American naval vessel. And since this is for the agency's record, I don't think there can be any doubt that the Israelis knew exactly what they were doing. Any statement to the effect that they didn't know that it was an American ship is nonsense, end of quote. And finally, Sam, I want to quote the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff under President Nixon. His name is Admiral Thomas Moorer. He stated this, quote, Israel attempted to prevent the Liberty's radio operators from sending a call for help by jamming American emergency radio channels. Israeli torpedo boats machine-gunned lifeboats at close range that had been lowered to rescue the most seriously wounded, end of quote. So, Sam, Israel is not our friend. We should not be unifying the militaries of the two organizations. Sam?
Amen to that, sir. We need to stand up, and we really need to realize that our sovereignty is at stake. While we're titillated with all this stuff on the right hand, be careful what Congress is doing in the left hand. FISA, the 702 stuff, they're breaching our sovereignty left and right in this 24. Is it 224?
Yes, 224.
This 224 section absolutely needs to be focused on, debated publicly, challenged, and ultimately rejected, in my opinion. For Lowell Nelson, campaignforliberty.org, I'm Sam Bushman. God save our republic.